Welcome 4K to another week coming to you virtually from my classroom. It has been a really long time, it feels, since I made one of these videos for you guys. So with that, I hope you had a great break. And today we are going to get back into cutting. So we are going to be looking at a sheet that looks like this. And on this sheet, we have a lot of what are called abstract shapes. So abstract shapes, you could say, look like a random puddle or something spiky like this one, almost like broken glass. It's not a circle. It's not a shape that we have a name for. With these, they can make cutting a little bit harder. So I'm going to talk about the top three and then this bottom one. And for those of you that finish those three, you'll have the option to do this one if you get the other three done. So let's go into upside down and I can show you how to do that. All right. So we have our four shapes and we have our scissors. For the rest of the year, we're going to be mainly focusing on cutting and gluing. We'll have a little bit of drawing and a little bit of coloring and maybe even some painting. But really, we're going to focus on gluing and cutting. So we have our scissors here. Again, a little reminder, we put our thumb in the small hole, our other fingers in the bottom. And whenever we have a large sheet that has multiple shapes that we need to cut out and we're not worried about the background, the white, I always say, let's make this paper smaller so that it's easier for us to hold on to. So the first thing we're going to do, without touching any of the shapes, we are going to cut in between them like this. And if you notice, my thumb is on top right here, holding my paper, and my thumb is on top with the scissors, which are always pointed away from my body. With that, we call it balance. We have balance when cutting. Okay. So we have that one done. Now I'm going to turn my paper, and now I'm going to cut in between these ones. And the last one in between these. Okay. So this one is for those of you that really finish with time to spare. Maybe this is cut out during some extra time, but with the time that you're given, if you get all three of these done, you're doing really well. All right. So the easiest one, I think, is this one here. So this one allows me to talk about some basics, which are, again, holding on. We don't want to cut towards our hand or close to our hand. So we always want to go kind of in that opposite direction, going and cutting away from this hand, which is really important and is allowing us to hold. But we don't want to go at that finger or that hand. So holding it like this, you notice I'm starting over here. And sometimes it's hard to know where to start because we don't have a line that brings us. So I kind of like to find a part on the shape, no matter what the shape looks like. And so I see this little side of it here, and I'm going to imagine that there's an imaginary line that comes off the edge of the paper here. So I'm going to line it up and cut into the paper, and now I am right on that shape. So as I cut, all right, I open my scissors, and as I close my scissors, slowly I am turning my paper. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to stay right on that black line. And I open my scissors again and slowly close them. As I'm closing them, I am turning the paper with my other hand. So this one, again, I'm just using my other hand, not the hand that I'm cutting with, but the other hand that's holding the paper to turn my scissors. You'll notice my scissors never really move the whole video. They just kind of stay right where they were when I started. Right? So that one's just kind of turning it as if you were cutting out a circle. When we do one like this one, the outside here is a lot like the shape we just did, but then we have all of these pieces that we have to like get inside of. So I always like to kind of cut the outside, the easier, longer part first, and then we'll talk about these shapes. So again, finding that imaginary line, looking at this edge and trying to get to it. I'm holding the paper all the way over here, not cutting towards my fingers, and then quickly going, or not quickly, slowly going around this shape. Right. Again, now when I get to this shape, I could do a couple things. I could come in here and go around this shape. Okay, and as I'm closing, I'm turning my scissors, staying on that line. Or what we could do is we could get rid of a lot of the paper that's hanging off here and go from the top of this blue part to the top of this blue part, and then come back and cut out the inside. Sometimes just having less paper is helpful. So now that I have all of that other white paper cut off, now I can start here and do the same thing where as I cut, as I'm closing my scissors, my other hand is turning my paper. So as I am closing my scissors, slowly I am turning the paper. Right. Again, this one's going to be a lot harder than that first one. Now for the last one, okay, this one I have a trick. Anytime that we have all these points, I like to get a lot of this white paper off first. And what I want you to do is we're going to kind of come in from the side here, and we're going to go at one of these points. Okay, so I'm cutting towards that point on that imaginary line. And when I get to that point, now I'm going to cut to another point. Then I'm going to turn my paper and I'm going to cut to another point and another point. And then with this one, it lines up. I'm going to cut all along this edge. And then I'm going to cut to this point, to this point, to this one, and then the last one here. Okay. So why are we cutting this one differently than this one? It's because whenever we have this zigzag shape, what we have in the inside of those zigzags is the letter V, right? And V's are really easy to cut out once we have all that other paper off. So what I do now is I cut into the V until I touch that other black line that's coming across this way. And then I turn my paper. And now I cut on this black line and I cut until it falls out. Right? So all I'm doing here is making one cut, and then I'm turning and I'm cutting that off like that. And the reason that we do this is because this is probably the best way to not have any of these points tear off. Sometimes students cut and they cut in and then they turn. And if you notice, see what I'm doing to that point? See how it's being bent? All right. And sometimes people will tear this point off because of all the stress that the scissors do when trying to cut. When I cut like this, I don't have any of that stress on that shape. And there's nothing easier to cut than a straight line. So now I turn again, cut, cut, turn, and two more sections. And if it doesn't fall off, that means that a little bit more needs to cut. Never pull because you could tear something. Just go back in and cut a little bit more. All right. If you do it right, you'll have all these little pieces, which you'll have to pick up and put into the recycling. So we have these three shapes. And then for those of you that get all three of those done and you do really well, notice I don't have a lot of white spaces left on my shapes, then you can try this one, or you could take it home and practice it. right? Good luck, everyone. Hope that you learned a couple things, and I will see you next week. Bye.